Hey guys, how's it going? Kripp here. Bit of a late video, but I got some pretty sweet cards to review for you guys. Today was a big card reveal stream for the Witchwood. We didn't really get any new news from the actual expansion as a whole. We don't know when it's coming out yet, but we do know that there's going to be 2 legendaries per class, which has been the case in the last year or so. But they've kind of had excuses for that in the past, like, oh, we're going to give quests to every class. We're going to give weapons to every class. This time around, there's just 2 legendaries per class. They're just seemingly going with that from this point on. So if you do see a class legendary and you think it's crap, and in some cases it will be, it does not mean it's game over for the legendary department of that class. All right, let's get to it here. So we got Warpath earlier in the week. Warpath is a pretty interesting warrior spell that allows you to do the whirlwind effect several times over. When I first saw this card, it reminded me of a conversation that I had with my Twitch chat just the day before when someone guessed exactly that card, and my reply was, so basically just like a terrible version of Defile. Well, I thought about it some. I read some people's thoughts on Reddit and whatnot, and I feel like the card is actually pretty good. It's just that it's a card that will typically fit in a more controlling style of warrior, and there's certainly no guarantee that is going to happen. But if it does, this is a pretty good card. I feel like Whirlwind costing 1 or 2 doesn't matter too much most of the time, even when comboed with like Sleep with the Fishies or something like that. It's typically fine if you're not doing it on turn 3. So it's an okay, immediate, early game, semi-board clear against a bunch of scrawny little minions. So, right, it's pretty good in that sense. But in the late game, when you're just flooded by mana and you're looking for actual board clears, this kind of converts into one. Warrior is a class that doesn't mind using up its whole turn to clear the board. So playing 5 of these and probably basically killing just about every minion at that stage of the game is pretty good. That flexibility is certainly worth something, and I cannot call this card terrible as a result. I think it's a pretty decent card, but it belongs in an archetype of warrior that, again, we're not too likely to see from what we can tell so far. We also got the Rogue Legendary, the Face Collector. Straight from Game of Thrones, I guess, huh? 3 mana 2/2, it's got Echo, and you get a legendary minion when you play it. It's obviously an extremely high value card. It's a high power level card, but in my opinion, it doesn't follow the Rogue decks that typically survive through the ages of Hearthstone, which is tempo related. It's a weak tempo card. Rogue has received extremely powerful, extremely high value cards before, but they just don't see competitive play because that's not what works for Rogue. While it's an extremely powerful card, if you want to play the value game, if you want to play the control game, other classes historically have just done that way better. Now, it's possible that we are all underestimating the Echo mechanic, and Echo just naturally works in the flow of the game, so maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I think it is overall a bit of a misfit. It's a great card, but it doesn't seem to work in most of the Rogue decks that have been existing or we can imagine right now. In part of today's stream, we got a whole bunch. Starting off with Houndmaster Shaw, the 4 mana 3/6. So this is El Primo Statorino here, and your other minions have Rush. And Rush is another of the new mechanics where you can attack right away if minions have Rush, but you cannot go face with them. So it's the board control Hunter card. And, you know, we typically think of Hunter going face, but mid-range Hunter in the past has not necessarily done that. Hunters also really like Death Rattle minions, so if you're playing with Death Rattle minions, it's not like you have to play this and then play other cards to give them Rush. It's just a passive effect like Tundra Rhino. So, you know, if you have Death Rattle minions that produce other minions, you can play this and get a whole bunch of tempo by hitting up the rest of the board. Usually what that's going to mean as a 4 mana 3/6 body is this is going to survive until the next turn. So it's kind of like a getting out of control board mid-range card. And I actually think it's very good. I think this is a very high power level card. I think this is very likely to see some play in Hunter. But again, Hunter, we'll see about that. We also got Rotten Applebomb, the 5 mana 4/5 taunt with Death Rattle giving you health. In my opinion, this is going to be a very, very high likelihood silence card. but it's still pretty good. With N'Zoth rotating out, I don't know if it'll really see much play, but it is pretty good. Taunt is typically quite premium, and healing is typically quite premium as well. Both on a card, fairly poorly statted for its mana cost, but still it has those two very valuable things. It's hard to write this card off, honestly. We have Witchwood Apple, 2 mana, add 3 2/2 Treants to your hand. Treants are not very good minions. They're 2 mana 2/2s. So if you really want to break it down, to get the most value out of this card, you're going to be paying 8 total mana for 3 2/2s, which you can kind of do for 5 mana with Force of Nature, and that card has not seen play since it was changed to that. So it's probably not very good in the traditional sense. However, touching upon our next card, Whispering Woods, 4 mana, summon a 1/1 Wisp for each card in your hand. Well, it's suddenly not too bad. There are some synergistic aspects to these cards, and I imagine there's going to be more than just that. So possibly for now, this will be an underrated archetype of Druid. We'll have to see. Overall, I think this card is very good. Remember, the maximum hand size in Hearthstone is 10, not 7. So if you just have a whole bunch of cards, this is an extremely high value card. Now, Druid decks that want to play a bunch of small minions and afterwards buff them up and Savage Roar and beat the hell out of you have a difficult time keeping a lot of cards in their hand, which is where the previous card might come in, which is where possibly future Witchwood cards might come in. It is another extremely high power level, extremely high tempo, which Druid desperately needs, by the way. But again, it's a bit of a misfit card. But these things typically get resolved through expansion blocks as a whole, which, we're not whole yet. So I think this is going to be a really good card. You're looking at 4 mana 7/7, but because it's across 7 bodies potentially, that is extremely advantageous, especially for the Druid class. We have Rebuke, Paladin spell, enemy spells, basically the Loatheb effect. Loatheb is an extremely powerful card. It's still played all the time in Wild. Now, Loatheb is a 5 mana 5/5 with this effect, and there are advantages and disadvantages to that, but I would say mostly advantages. I would say this card is not nearly as good as Loatheb, because typically when you play Loatheb, you're playing it to protect a whole bunch of minions, so the fact that you're playing a 5/5 body in addition to getting that effect, helps you a lot. It helps you push for that next turn lethal a lot of the time. Rebuke doesn't do that, but what Rebuke does do is give Paladin a lot of more synergy with Divine Favor, as if it didn't have enough already. So it does give you a better Divine Favor. It gives you an option to lock out the board state that you've developed. So I think it's an extremely high power level card, but the card slots for the aggressive Paladin decks are pretty premium. I don't know if you can really fit this in, especially ×2, but it certainly looks like a very powerful card. I think it's a card that will have to be defined by the meta. If most of the top meta decks rely on spells to recover in the game, and Aggro Paladin is still a thing, trust me, Aggro Paladin will still be a thing, this is going to be a very powerful card. Vivid Nightmare. So basically you copy a minion as a priest and it has 1 health remaining. You can heal it up. It's not bad. That's a pretty good card, right? Priest can already copy a minion for 3, so when it comes to combo decks, this doesn't do much more than Priest was already able to. It does do a few things. So the first thing that it does is, because this is a spell and the other cards that copy your minions for 3 are minion based, this can get discounts from a Radiant Elemental. So, possibly you can do like a Radiant Elemental plus Lyra super spell combo wombo thing. So because of that, it might be a little bit better, though the previous minion based version was not particularly popular. So hard to say if that will really see play, but I was thinking about it a little bit, and there might be more to it than that. The attack of the minion is full, so yes, the health goes to 1, you can heal it a little bit, but the attack of the minion is full. So, just playing Leroy in that is 12 damage. yeah, it's nothing to laugh at, you know? Possibly there could be some charge or some rush or some, shadow madness type of combos. But again, it's missing a few pieces. It's missing the rest of the deck. So it's something we'll have to keep an eye out for as the Witchwood cards are revealed. Now we have a Warlock legendary, Glinda Krauskin. It's a 6 mana 3/7, so the stats are terrible. For 6 mana, you are typically looking at Boulder Fist stats at a minimum, which is 6/7. So it's a really crappy stat minion, and you get a lot of value. Now, Warlocks can already get a lot of value, so it certainly competes with the Cube, Demon, whatever you want to call it, Control Lock side of things. But I think this card is possibly a good fit in a zoo-like deck. So with Echo, all of your other minions having Echo, there's a lot of combos there. You might be able to do like a Summoning Stone or something. You could do Summoning Stone, Glinda, and then 2 3-drops, which might be very good. You can also do like a Knife Juggler combo, I was thinking. You can do Knife Juggler, Glinda, and then, well, like 5 Wisps. 5 juggles, or you can do Glinda, Juggler, and then 4 Wisps, which is kind of like an Avenging Wrath effect. That's pretty good. So there's a lot of combos within the Zoo deck, and Warlock Zoo has typically been just play high stat minions. Getting that combo push within that archetype might actually push the deck to be quite a bit stronger than it normally is. Next up, we have Nightmare Amalgam, which is the 3 mana 3/4 every creature type, every minion type, I guess, which is pretty interesting. Certainly the upsides are, well, it beats the hell out of Spider Tank. Spider Tank is crying, guys. It's a mecha along with all the other stuff. It's pretty strong with the search tribal effects of Karazhan, but Karazhan is not going to be in standard anymore when the Witchwood is released, so that might be a challenge because I don't think that quite meets the power level of the wild format. But it's still very good nonetheless. It will absolutely help a lot of the tribal decks that might be coming up. We always know how, it's a bit short on some tribal decks to make them work. Traditionally, it's been with dragons. That's why we had such a big dragon priest push. Well, having something like this in the game makes that requirement a lot lower. I think this card has its disadvantages because, well, it can be killed by every version of Crab and whatnot. But on the plus side, I think a card like this might be a good candidate to actually be added to the classic set. So something to think about perhaps. Overall, pretty strong, nothing crazy, but I'm really glad they ended up going with a card like this. Then we have a new Shaman card. We have the Witch's Apprentice. It's a 1 mana 0/1. It's basically a pre-hexed minion for 1. And it has taunt, which is pretty useful because Shaman does fight very aggressively for board control in the early stages. And the battle cry adds a spell, Shaman spell, to your hand. So it's basically like a babbling book. Not having the attack, I think, makes it a little bit worse universally. Babbling book can literally be played in every single mage deck that you can imagine. This card might be tailored to a bit narrower of a shaman deck, but I think it's still very strong. I imagine even playing kind of like a board control zoo-like shaman, having just a small granular taunt to defend your Flame Tongue Totem and likely give you some more reach for a follow-up turn, I think that's pretty good. So I think this is a pretty good card. It's going to see quite a bit of play as long as Shaman sticks in there. And Shaman's been struggling lately, but Shaman is getting the one new hero card this time around. There's no other class getting a new hero card, but Shaman is getting a new hero card, and that hero card was revealed today, and it is Hagatha the Witch. It's an 8-cost hero, so on the expensive side, but the battle cry does 3 damage to everything. It is a Hellfire effect, so it does do 3 damage to your own stuff as well. That makes it a little bit worse, of course, but I think in general, this card is just fine. The idea is that when you play a high mana card to generate more value later, it can be very difficult to launch that if you're behind on the board. And you typically are going to be behind on the board. So this is a very powerful battle cry for this type of card. It gives you a new hero power, Bewitch. And this gets really crazy with Echo cards. Every time you play a minion, you add a random Shaman spell to your hand. Shaman spells are actually very strong. We learned that through the Shaman weapon, even though the Shaman weapon is absolute garbage. A lot of the time, the effect of just getting a random Shaman spell is extremely potent, and we can basically expect exactly that with this. The idea is, though, that you have to play minions, so if you're playing just one minion at a time, it can be difficult to keep that up. But with the new Echo mechanic, even like the one that was previously revealed, like a 3-mana 2/4 taunt with Echo, if you play 3 of those, you're getting 3 spells from one card, right? That's kind of like getting a free Kabbalist's Tome, if you think about it. So the synergy with Echo cards is extreme. Now, we haven't seen that many neutral Echo cards, so that basically I think is going to dictate just how powerful Hagatha is going to be. I think as a baseline, Hagatha is a high power level card, but if we see like, oh, I don't know, like a dozen more neutral Echo minions, Hagatha is going to be ridiculous. So again, another card to watch out for. Basically, the card reveals that we had in the last week that I reviewed for you guys just now, a lot of them are powerful cards in misfit roles, powerful cards that could be completely insane if they had more support. So while some of these cards standalone don't look that impressive, it certainly gives this quite a bit more curiosity to see what's left in the rest of the set. So we'll see what that is, and I'll update you guys as that comes in. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.